Hey there crew, it's Mark, and in today's video, I'm gonna share and create 10 hand-drawn fonts that you can create and use today inside of your bullet journal, your planners, your notes, wherever you want to use them. And I'm going to be doing them in real time, no speeding anything up, so come along with me, grab yourself a pen, a notebook, and practice along with me. And then one of the last fonts I'm gonna create today, I don't have a name for it just yet, so this is where you're gonna come in and you're gonna help name this font. Then once we have the name, I'm gonna put out a freebie to my newsletter. If you haven't signed up, that link will be down in the descriptions for you, and then you'll have this free practice sheet that you can use over and over again. So let's go ahead and start with our first font. This one is called Lowline. All right, Lowline will be using a Tom Studio Duo pen here filled with fountain pen ink, all these different tips. Love this pen so much. So to start Lowline, let's start with the letter A just to kind of set our baseline for how we're gonna create this. So we're gonna create the A and we're gonna put that cross line lower on the lines here that we have, right? Usually when we create the letter A, we put that right about in the middle. But for Lowline, all of our letters that have the cross lines or any type of meeting point are going to start right about where this letter A is. So if we do the letter B, we'll draw a straight line down, and that top bubble of our B is actually going to come all the way down right to where that low line is on all of our letters. That's where it gets its name from. Not everything is going to have that low, but anything that's going to come up, the C's, the G's, they're all going to stop right where this low line is. So for the letter E, we're going to put that line a little bit lower here to meet up where everything else is. F is going to look very similar. And then when we do our letter G, when we're pulling that line up, it's going to stop right where everything else is here. For our letter H, we'll do the same thing. That cross line is going to be lower to kind of match up where everything is here. The J, that up line, is going to stop where all those other low lines are here. Our K is going to be the same way. We're going to go ahead and draw our line down to where this low line is. Then for the letter M, we're going to draw that lowest point of our M. Instead of going all the way down, we're going to stop it at that low line here. And then for the letter P, we're going to do the same thing. That bubble is going to come all the way down, almost like the B that we had over here. But of course, we're not going to draw that extra P's. Q, low line here. R is going to come all the way down with our leg. Now for the letter S, we're going to draw this, but that lower line, instead of drawing it kind of right in the center, right, our normal S's, we kind of center it here. We're just drawing that line lower down to meet where the low line is for the rest. The W is kind of that M in reverse. We're only going to bring that line up to about that low line here. X, we're going to go ahead and draw this, and we're going to cross our X where that low line is. It looks a little funny, but that's how this font works out. And then for the letter Y, we're going to bring our top letter down to where that low line is. We've got that. And then for our Z, we're going to go ahead and just draw that normal. All right, congratulations. You have done the first font of what we're practicing today for Lowline. So let's go ahead and do font number 2, and I call this one Dot. All right, for Dot, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to write all of our letters how we normally would. So let's go ahead and draw out our A. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add dots to anywhere that there's a point on our letters. What's cool about this font is you can add it to any other one. So if you wanted to add dots to Lowline, you absolutely could. But this one, we're just going to draw kind of the normal way we would do all of our letters. What I like about this font is that you can write pretty quick with it because all you're doing is just adding those dots as you're going along. And if you wanted to, you could also just quickly draw out all of your letters. And then go back over top of them to add all of your dots. For letters like O that don't have any major connecting points, you can just use wherever you're starting and stopping as that connection point. So this is what dot looks like as a full font. Now, if you wanted to, you could also do this with lowercase letters. I write in caps a lot of the time, but if you want to, just know that you can change up your font depending on whatever you're in the mood for. You're just going to change the size, but everything about it stays exactly the same in where you put your dots and your connectors. If you want to get a little bit extra fancy with dots, something you could do is leave an open circle wherever you're connecting and then come back over top of that dot with a glitter pen or something sparkly if you wanted to add a little pop of fun. All right, our next font is called Curve. The way that the Curve font works is by reducing the number of straight lines that you have in your letters. Everything we've done so far has very straight lines for A's and B's and E's. What we're going to do is we're going to bend it a little bit. So the letter A will start as a curved line. The letter B is going to start with nothing but curves. We're going to bend all of the different letters a little bit. Some of them, like the letter C, already have that curve to it, so you don't have to do anything extra. What's cool about this font also is you can change the curve if you want to, depending on your letter. Sometimes I'm going to have it curve towards the right. Sometimes I'll curve to make it work towards the left. Experiment with this one and see what looks best for each of your letters. So far, I'm super proud of you. You've created 3 handmade fonts already that you can use. We're gonna continue along now with our 4th, and this one is called Serif. So for all of my font geeks out there, these straight letters without any extra lines on them are called sans serifs, right? Without a serif. But when you have a serif, those are gonna be these small little lines that accompany your letters. But what I like to do is just extend any line that doesn't so that I can add a serif to it. And it can look a lot of different ways if you want to. Honestly, your letter B serif could just be the lines coming out past here. You don't have to add the other verticals, but because I want to make a fun font that's personalized to me, I'm going to add the extra lines wherever I can. So all I'm doing is extending my lines past where I would for those main lines. And then any type of extension that comes out from here, I can also add a serif to. So in this case, for our letter E, I can draw this line out a little bit further to add those small serifs. I can also do serifs that just face up, serifs that just come down, or ones that come straight across the letters as well. Similar to the other letters, you could write out your entire alphabet and then come back and add the serifs to it afterwards if you want to. Sometimes it's easier to do it this way, but the problem that I have is that sometimes I'll forget a letter and then suddenly you have all of your alphabet or all of your word and then you're like, oh, wait a second, I don't have any serifs on this one. The serif fonts are a little bit more technical in how you think about drawing them, but what I love is that once you learn that skill, you can start to incorporate that into other letters, whatever you're looking for. And in just a little bit, we're gonna actually be mixing two fonts together using serifs again, which honestly is one of the most visually beautiful fonts. I can't wait to get there, but we have to build on it. I'm gonna share my next favorite font with you. It's actually my #1 favorite font. I call this one Big Little. Big Little is one of my favorite fonts to do, but you do have to think about it a little bit as you're creating them. We're gonna go ahead and start our lettering with a capital A, and then the next letter we're gonna do is a B, but we're gonna make it smaller than it. Still capital letters, and then when we do our C, it'll be another big letter, and we're gonna continue that pattern, big, little, big, little, big, little, as we go throughout this entire alphabet. A lot of concentration goes into this font because I have to remind myself as I'm writing to make one bigger or smaller than the last one before it. You might be able to see why I love this one so much. It looks so cool on the page. And what I love about this font too is that you can actually reverse the pattern if you want to, because not every A is always going to be large in the words that you write. They're not exactly going to follow this all the time. It all depends on the word that you're writing. And it looks totally different if you start little and then big as you go throughout everything. So Big Little does take a little extra brain power as you're writing that to think about that big and little pattern as you go across. But let's take our brains to the next level. And a really cool font, but this one, it's gonna take a little time. So we're gonna go slow. I call this one Up Low. So Up Low is a variation on Big Little, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and write our first letter in an uppercase, and then our next letter is going to be a lowercase letter. So we took that one a little bit slower because it does take an extra minute also to remember what the lowercase letter looks like, especially for someone like me who writes in all caps all the time. I really like the way it looked. It makes it look a little bit different. And similar to Big Little, if you start low up instead of up low, you get a totally different variation of the font. The next font we're gonna create is my second favorite most font. I use it all of the time inside of my notebooks, and it's called Pillar. Now, after we go through the main basics of how to create this hand-done font, I'm going to show you some really cool variations that you can use for this font as well to give you even more ideas. So Pillar is going to start similar to a lot of our other letters, but the difference is that on the left-hand side of all of our letters, we're going to draw a pillar. And I'm going to do that on every single letter that I'm going to create. So A has the first line with that open pillar, and we draw out the rest of the letter. B has the pillar on the left, and then we connect the bubbles of the B onto that. Now C is a little bit different because it doesn't have a main line. So what I do is after I draw the letter C, I draw a straight line and it creates a pillar inside of the letter. Now, some of the letters, you can go ahead and add those pillars on later. So in this case, if I drew a regular E, I just have to draw that pillar over there on the left-hand side. The only problem with that is you have to make sure that you're giving your letters enough space in between so they're not touching. So that's why I always like to draw the pillars first and then go ahead and add to my letter. G is similar to C that it doesn't really have a natural place to go, so I'm going to draw a line to add it on the left-hand side. The letter I is just one big pillar. And J is a little tricky as well because we don't have a left-hand line. So a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll draw a line over towards the left and straight down, and that's going to create that pillar on the opposite side. O gets treated like the other letters, like the C and the G. Q gets treated like those as well. Now S gets a little bit tricky, and what I do on this one is I draw out my S, but I make my curves a little bit longer because I'm actually going to draw those pillars and connecting the top to that bottom line there for the S. Now U can have that left-hand pillar because we have that extra line there, but I draw it afterwards. I love the way X's look in Pillar personally. Y, you can choose to do it on the left-hand side, or if you wanted, you could also put your pillar on the right-hand side if you want to have a longer line. That's totally up to you. And then Z is a little bit interesting because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this diagonal line into my pillar instead. Pillar overall is a very bold looking font. You need that extra space. And to make it look extra cool, we can add some variations to this font and use the pillar to create some cool looks. So here are a few of my favorite variations on Pillar, and all of them have to do about utilizing this open space over here on the left-hand side of the letters. So one of the first things I love to do, and I use this one all the time, is I'm just going to draw a bunch of horizontal lines going up that pillar. Right away, changes the way that font looks completely. If you want to, I also like to add a downward V, like a little bit of a chevron look here, and then you can just fill in the bottom part of that letter if you want to. You could also just make it completely solid if you want to, and just fill it all in with the same color pen that you have. Start to make it look a little classy and fancy here. And you can also go in with highlighters or other colors and do that as well. So you can start with your base font for Pillar and then add a total color scheme to it. You can also use things like paint pens and create some layering on top of your letters. So I'm going to fill that in with one color, and then come back with another color right on top to add another pattern to it. Instead of straight lines, you can do some diagonal lines, pick a different color, and then color that in as well. Pillar is one of the most versatile fonts out there. You can dress it up, make it very minimalistic, do whatever you want, and that honestly is why it's one of my absolute favorites. So let's do another variation on Pillar with our next font, and this one is called Double Line. Now what I love about Double Line is it's very similar to what we're doing with Pillar, except we're not going to close off the lines. Instead, I'm going to draw two lines just right next to itself as I'm connecting these letters. But one thing I like to do is I like to extend past this, right? It's just a little bit of a different variation on what Pillar is, but you're just kind of going beyond. The other reason I love this font so much is I think it looks super creepy. So if you have a creepy looking spread going on, some type of a theme, right around Halloween is a great time to use this font. Your lines don't have to be as pronounced if you don't want to, but I really do personally think that the more pronounced they are, the more uneven they are, the cooler and creepier this font looks. And if you're ever unsure where you want to put the extra line, draw your letter like normal and then just pick a spot. Now O, similar to what we've done with Pillar, is just going to have one line, but again, if you just pull it out just a little bit, it makes this font totally different looking. So a very similar style to Pillar that we just created, but not connecting that line, having it off just a little bit, just makes this font look so much cooler. Earlier, we talked about bringing serif back in, and we're going to be mixing that along with Pillar right now to create a variation that I like to call bold serif. Now, for this one, I'm going to be doing something a little bit differently. I'm actually going to be using a dip pen and fountain pen ink that has some shimmer in it because it totally calls for it. Now, if you don't have these materials at home, you can use this same exact one with whatever pen or markers that you're using, but we are going to be filling in some space. So just be aware of how thick you're making your letters as you're doing this, so you're not coloring them in forever. The ink I'm going to be using today is from Dominant Industry, and this one is called Atlantis. This is an absolutely beautiful ink. I love to use it whenever I can, and this is a perfect time to use this one. For the pen for this one, I'm using a Kakamori glass tip nib here with my River City Pen Company holder. Just love using these together. Now, if you want to use another type of glass dip pen, you can. You can actually get these on Amazon and other stationery stores. I'll link a bunch of them down in the descriptions below. Just something extra fun to try with your lettering. I'm going to start this one off at speed so that you can see what this looks like as we build this out. But as we get further into the alphabet and understand how we're building this font, I will speed it up just because it does take a bit of time. All right, bold serif is going to start similar to Pillar. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and draw out our letter A in Pillar. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add serif to Pillar. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fill in the line here. And then this is my favorite part. We're going to go ahead on all of our serifs, we're going to give a little bit of a curve to them. It doesn't have to be a dramatic curve. It can be very slight, but it makes such a difference in how this looks. Now, each of these letters are going to be very bold. And that's honestly why you need to take your time with this font and make sure that you're giving yourself enough space. Loving the way that this font looks. Little touches with your pen or your ink or whatever you're using will go ahead and connect it really nicely. If you want to add a little bit of extra fun to your letters, you can also add like a cross and then connect those up too. It gives it like a very old worldy kind of style. Like if you want something dark and nefarious, this fits inside of here really well too. We've gone through 9 different hand-drawn fonts that you can use right now inside of your bullet journal and your planners and your notes. But for this last one, I'm going to need your help. I created it, but I don't have a good name for it. So once we get to the end of these letters and you see what they look like, you're gonna let me know down in the comment section below what you think we should call this one before I put out the freebie with all of these fonts inside of it. So let's go ahead and get started with unnamed font number 10. So for this mystery font, the way that we're going to start this is by creating some bubble letters. So we're going to create a really big A and a big fat looking font here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to create some drop shadows along this letter. I'm going to usually create them on the outside left and the inside left of each letter that has a space. So for B, we'll do the same thing, a nice big open B. And then we're going to start a line at the top and bring it down around for the letter. We can fill in some of these little spaces in here too as we do this. This is going to be another font that you want to make sure has enough space, especially because we are adding these drop shadows over here on the sides. One thing I like about this font is it's just like a fun one. You don't have to be overly technical about it. And it does remind me a bit of like bubble letters from back in the day. But adding this drop shadow over on the side just gives it like a little bit of a different look. It makes it look a bit thicker, right? So I don't have a name for this one, so this is where you're gonna help me out. Down in the comment section below, I want you to drop the name that you think works best for this unnamed font. I have a few in my head, but I'm not gonna say them out loud because I want your creativity to thrive here. Now, after we pick the name of this, I'm gonna go ahead and compile all of these into a digital form, and I'm gonna send them out as a freebie to my newsletter subscribers. Now, I've had this newsletter for quite a few years now, and I don't spam people with, let me just throw that out there. I don't send things a whole lot, just when important fun things come up, like if I create a new freebie or we have some new cool videos going on, or maybe a cool blog post. You can subscribe to the newsletter in the link in the descriptions below, but more importantly, we're looking for the name for this font before we can do anything else. I am so excited, and I hope that you have some really cool ideas on how you can use these 10 different fonts inside of your bullet journals and your planners or your notes or whatever you're using. Having this arsenal of different fonts makes bullet journaling and planning just a little bit more fun. It's great to be productive, it's great to get things done, but we also want to have fun ways that we can be creative inside of the things that we're using as well. If you like these type of videos, I have some more bullet journal idea videos in this playlist for you right here. My friends, it's been awesome hanging out with you today, and I'll talk to you next time. See ya.